Dubai, 10 o'clock a.m. The sun poured over the glass panels like molten glass. The air was thick with golden light. Everything gleamed, so shiny it forced people to reflect on themselves, both outside and inside. An older man walked slowly along the stone-paved sidewalk, leaning on an ebony cane. His left shoulder sloped slightly, an old wound that never fully healed. He wore a faded white shirt, simple khaki pants, and scuffed brown leather shoes. Everything about him was neat and clean, but decidedly it was not expensive. His weathered face and deep-set eyes spoke of someone who had seen much and kept it all quietly inside. Pinned to his chest, a small badge. USMC, retired. United States Marine Corps, retired. His name was Walter Beckett, 71. An American veteran traveling alone through the Middle East, a journey he called his final tour. He stopped in front of a massive glass building. High above, golden letters glimmered in the sun. Air Motors. Inside was another world. Ferrari, Bentley, Aston Martin. And in the center, a concept car seen only in magazines. No price, no introduction, just displayed like a dream forged in steel. Walter didn't plan to buy. He only wanted a closer look. A man who once drove a jeep across deserts, past landmines, through cold and blood. Today, he just wanted to gaze at a quiet, perfect machine. Not for show, but for reverence. As he stepped through the glass doors, the scent of leather and walnut mixed with the cool breath of air conditioning. And then she appeared. Tall, young, blonde, ice-grey eyes. Dressed in a white tailored suit cut to the millimeter. A slim badge on her lapel. Alexis Guest Relations. Her smile was polished and completely empty. "I'm sorry, sir, but today's showroom is by appointment only, and for this model, only guests with verified portfolios are allowed into the private gallery." "I only wanted to take a look," he said softly, voice gravelly. "No touching. I read about the Ferrari Koenigsegg concept. It's here, isn't it?" Alexis frowned slightly. Her eyes flicked to his cane, his worn shoes, and then back to his lined face. "We aim to maintain an experience consistent with our brand environment, sir. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in our display near Emirates Mall." She smiled again, a slight bow, just polite enough to be proper, just cold enough to dismiss. Walter nodded. He said nothing. Turn, one step at a time. His cane gently taps the stone floor. No one called him back. No one apologized. Only the sun waited outside. And a veteran feeling his heartache was an old wound reopened after decades. Part 1. A quiet man walks away. Walter stepped out of the showroom door like a man closing a chapter in his life, not because the cars were too expensive, but because the people had become too cheap. A breeze whispered between the skyscrapers. He gently tugged his sleeve to cover a long scar on his left arm, once a badge of honor, now a burden in a world that didn't care who he was. He wasn't angry. Walter Beckett had seen war, had seen death in every step. So he didn't let anger lead him. Just heaviness in the chest. Like the day he returned home from war. No welcome, no flags, no thanks, only silence and eyes that looked away. That afternoon he sat alone at a small cafe across the street, playing the earlier scene in his mind like a slow-motion reel. Alex's eyes, sharp as blades, her practiced smile, indifferent as wind. Her final words, "a more suitable experience," cut like a knife, bloodless but deep. He opened his wallet, pulled out a faded photo. A group of young soldiers standing beside an armored jeep. In the middle, a brown-haired young man, hand on a teammate's shoulder. Bold, brave, believing in justice. That boy was him. Walter, 1971. Outside Khe Sanh, Vietnam, half a world away. Texas, 5:42 a.m. The first rays of sunlight hadn't yet touched the hills. Chuck Norris's ranch was still blanketed in morning mist. A rooster crowed in the distance. Inside the wide wooden house, a phone rang. Chuck sat on a wooden chair by the window in a grey t-shirt and faded jeans. Their eyes were still sleepy, but instinct had woken him at 5, just like always. "Hello, Mr. Norris, it's me, Sergeant Danny, Texas Veterans Association." "Morning," Chuck nodded. "What's going on?" "I just got an email from Walter. He's in Dubai, doesn't seem to be doing well. No details, just one sentence." "What did he say?" "Just this. There are places where they don't care who you are." Chuck went silent. His hand tightened on the chair arm. Walter, his old friend, the man who trained with him in the early 70s boot camp, the man who once saved his life under enemy fire, the man who never asked for anything from anyone. Double-dack the next morning. Alexis stood in the showroom boardroom. She was being praised for preserving brand image by turning away non-qualified guests. A senior manager even said, "If they don't have potential value, don't waste time, Alexis, understand?" "Crystal clear, sir." She smiled. Smug, unapologetic. In Alexis's world, there were only two kinds of people: those who had money and those who were annoying. Texas. 2 hours after the call, Chuck didn't speak to anyone. He quietly climbed to the second floor, opened a safe, pulled out a small wooden box. Inside, old photos, letters, and a bronze medal. Medal of Honor. He opened his laptop. On the screen, satellite imagery of Dubai. He didn't bang on the keys. He typed 3 lines. Verify owner of Ori Motors, Dubai. Check shareholder list. Begin immediately. Friday, 6:45 p.m., Dubai. The city sky turned a blazing copper as the sun dipped behind golden domes. The glass buildings reflected the last rays of the day like they were on fire. But this wasn't just any evening. Not because the weather was perfect, but because something had shifted within the walls of Ori Motors. Just an hour earlier, the showroom had been a fortress of exclusivity. Now, it had been transformed into a private gala. No press, no media alerts, no celebrities. Just a select few, and every one of them knew this wasn't an ordinary event. White silk draped from the ceiling. Golden light washed over every curve of the displayed vehicles. Classical music with an electronic twist floated through the air like liquid calm. At center stage, the prototype of the century. Stallion VX1, ash gray and silver-flaked, its surface glowing like moonlight over the desert sand. Walter arrived. He didn't come in a limousine, just a sand-colored taxi, like thousands roaming Dubai's streets daily. When he stepped out, some wondered if he was lost. He wore an old brown suit, a pale white shirt, and clean but clearly worn shoes. The small USMC retired badge still pinned to his chest. In hand, the same wooden cane, the one that had followed him from Iraq to Bosnia. And now, back to this place. The very doors that had closed on him 3 days ago. Alexis was occupied, coordinating the evening. She wore a sleek black dress, red lipstick, high bun, and Louboutins. She didn't recognize Walter right away. He looked too ordinary. That same slight hunch. That face is untouched by money. Excuse me, sir. My name is Walter Beckett. I have an invitation. She tapped quickly on her tablet, ready to decline as usual. But then, the screen lit up in gold. Operation clearance. Executive guest. Level 1. Alexis froze. She had never seen that clearance before. Even the showroom manager didn't have access to level 1. Walter said nothing. He just stood there, calm, unmoving. Yes, this way, Mr. Beckett, she stammered. Silence spread like smoke. As Walter stepped into the showroom, something strange happened. No one spoke. No one was told to hush. They just felt it. Something big was about to happen. An old man, walking slowly with a cane, was entering like he'd belonged there all along. Main stage, lights dimmed. The music stopped. Every auxiliary light faded. Only a single warm spotlight remained, illuminating the center. Everyone turned. A man stood there. No microphone, no dramatic cues, just him. Chuck Norris. Black suit, no tie, no pins. Eyes sharp as forged steel. Silver hair at the temples. Not weakness, but proof. I've seen more than you know. He scanned the room. Each gaze caught his. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. So low that the room held its breath. Chuck's opening words. 3 days ago, a man walked into this building. He didn't demand anything. He didn't disturb anyone. He just wanted to look at a car. He paused, then added, "Who wasn't allowed?" Because he didn't look the way you're used to seeing. The room stood still, utterly silent. I'm not here to make noise. I'm here to restore something basic. Alexis stood frozen. She had been rooted to the spot since the first lights dimmed. Now her whole body was paralyzed. She knew this was about her. Chuck turned to Walter. This man is a Marine. He once held the lifeline at Fallujah. He carried paralyzed teammates back to base, on his back, and he was told he was not a good fit for the brand environment. A few soft gasps escaped around the room. No surprise, but shame. Chuck stepped off the stage. He walked over to Walter, stood beside him. No words, just a hand on his friend's shoulder. Once saved my life. Tonight, I return the favor. He turned back to the room. I'm the new owner of Ori Motors. From now on, these doors will be open to everyone. Not just those who flash cash, but those who uphold honor. All eyes turned to Walter. Still standing. Not tearful, not smiling. Just eyes. Red. Not from pride, but from something deeper. Being seen. He had never asked for a statue, only to not be turned away. Alexis stepped forward, trembling. I didn't know. Exactly, Chuck nodded. You didn't know, but you decided. I was following brand protocol. Respect isn't a bonus, it's the baseline. Chuck turned to a man in a dark suit, head of security. Escort her out. No need to come back. Alexis didn't cry. She simply froze. No one looked at her. The world turned its back, just as she had once turned her back on Walter. Chuck's final words. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand beside the right person at the right moment. Overhead lights lowered slowly. The applause didn't erupt. It rose, steady, real, like a heartbeat filling the room. The day after the gala at Ori Motors, the Dubai sun rose slowly, as if it too were deep in thought. No rush, no blinding brilliance, just soft, steady light drifting through the high glass windows of the Creek Hotel. Walter woke without an alarm. His body still operated like a soldier's. Early to rise, check everything, speak little. But today felt different. There was no weight on his chest. No invisible burden pressed into his ribs like it had 3 days ago. He stepped out onto the balcony. Below, the city still yawned and stretched. In his hand, a cup of black coffee, no sugar, a habit from his days stationed in the Pacific. Next to him, a handwritten note. Walter, today the showroom reopens. Come see what you started. See, Ori Motors open to the public for the first time. No red ropes, no security barricades, no golden guest lists. The automatic doors whooshed open. The familiar scent of leather and walnut still lingered, but the light was different now. Warm, welcoming. The front desk staff now wore soft grey suits. They bowed, not based on outfits, but with equal grace to all. The main hall had been transformed. No longer a stage for million-dollar vehicles rotating on glass pedestals. Instead, a Jeep M151A1, the kind used during the Vietnam War. A plaque below read, "This vehicle carried men who never returned, and those who brought hope back." Beside it, a black and white photo. Young Walter Beckett standing in the center of his squad, gripping a weather-worn M16, eyes aimed forward toward the future. A glass panel bore a single inscription: "You don't need to drive $1 million car to belong here. You only need a heart that has walked through pain and refused to let it turn you to stone." Chuck and Walter, over coffee in the executive office. "You turned the world upside down, Chuck." "No," Chuck shook his head. "I just turned a stuck gear. I never asked for all this. I only wanted to see a car." And in asking for that, they revealed who they really were. The two men locked eyes. No loud laughs, just a quiet smirk, the kind two old soldiers share when they know, a hot cup of coffee and human dignity. Sometimes that's the biggest win. 3 months later, Ori Motors under new leadership. On social media, a video went viral. A young shepherd boy from the mountains of Iran entered the Dubai showroom. For the first time in his life, he saw a Lamborghini. Eyes wide, he gasped in broken English. "Like a rocket, sir." A staff member knelt beside him, smiling, patiently explaining each part of the car like a bedtime story. The video closed with this message on the screen: "Luxury is not about what you own. It's about how you make others feel." The old guard and a new era. Khaled, once a showroom assistant terrified of Alexis, was now director of human experience, training all new staff in Dubai and at the Paris branch. Alexis, no one knew where she'd gone. Some said she applied at a Swiss dealership, where polished communication was still a selling point. But those who witnessed that night at Ori all knew. You don't have to hate her. She learned her lesson. And sometimes, failure is the only teacher arrogance will listen to. Walter, back home in Texas, he didn't bring back a luxury car. No new titles, no trophies, only a photograph snapped by Chuck. Walter standing alone in the ORAI showroom, a hand gently resting on the Stallion VX1, eyes not sparkling, but steady and reflective, as if looking into a mirror made of steel. The photo was printed and framed, hung in the hallway of the Texas Veterans Museum. Beneath it is a single quote: "Some heroes don't want a statue. They just want a place that won't turn them away. Chuck, in a private interview. A young reporter asked, "Why did you buy an entire showroom for just one man?" Chuck sipped his tea. "I didn't buy it for Walter. I bought it for people like you, who doesn't understand what respect means until it's gone. Do you consider him a hero? No. Walter doesn't need a title. He only needs to be seen." Epilogue, a story that needs no cheering. A fall evening. Walter sat on a wooden bench outside his home, listening to crickets. A worn book rested in his hand. The Machine of Patience, an English edition, was printed in 1987. On the table beside him, a glass of whiskey on the rocks, and a letter. Just a few lines. "I'm the lead design engineer for the Stallion VX1. I read your file. I hope someday I can build a car that is quiet enough and strong enough to carry men like you. The kind who speak little, but carry so much." Nina Tran, 26, Vietnam. Walter placed his hand on the letter and nodded, as if the world had finally heard his voice, even though he'd never raised it. Curtain call, a message that stays. Auray Motors is no longer just a showroom for cars. It has become a showroom for humanity, with all its value, wounds, pride, and redemption. At the entrance, behind a simple glass panel, true class begins where prejudice ends.